Hey guys, so in this lecture, what we are going to do is we're just going to take a step back before we start coding. We will try to understand what React is, why it came into existence, what are the different parts in the components, why is it known for, what are the advantages, what are the limitations, etc. So in this course, before even we get started, let's quickly see the definition of what React is, and this is straight from the website of React.js, and you can definitely check out the website. So I will read it out the definition and also clarify a few points and give more detailing onto why and how this comes into picture. So let's get started. So React is a library for building composable user interfaces, and it encourages the creation of reusable UI components which present data that changes over time. So consider this, that React, whenever you have your HTML page, right? So you have different components that come in. Even if you see the Udemy website, you can see the Udemy icon on the left side, the small buttons, notifications on the right side, the course description, and then what lectures, what videos, what articles that the course has. So those are different small components that form the whole HTML page. Similarly, any HTML page that you see on the websites will be composed of certain reusable components, and when you try to break these components into smaller parts, they can be reused very easily. So for instance, let's say that a review or the rating that the user has or any course has on Udemy website, it is displayed on the top, it is displayed in the search results, as well as it is displayed when the review section comes in. So that can be a reusable component. You don't have to code every time. All you have to do is send it a particular set of data and it will show you the output in a particular manner. Now, lots of people use React as the V in the MVC. So I don't know if you are aware of the MVC pattern. It is called model, view, and controller. So as per the model, view, controller, you basically have a separation of concerns. Basically, model is responsible for all the model work. The view is for the view layer, and the controller basically tells which view to be displayed when something gets clicked or what action is performed. So that's a very common pattern that you see across all the Java, Spring, PHP, any kind of an application that you pick up. So React abstracts away the DOM from you, giving you a simpler programming model and a better performance. So what it does is, most of the HTML updates that takes time, or whenever you render a page, the most of the time goes in updating the DOM. And people at Facebook who are very, very sensitive about the performance, because imagine billions of people hitting their website, and if the website becomes unresponsive or very slow in response, it takes them away. So for them, it was a very big challenge to speed up their website, and that's where React came into picture, where they created something called as a virtual DOM, which we will talk a little more in the detail in the coming lectures. But they took away the time that was consumed to update the DOM, and that's how they abstracted the DOM. Now, React can also render on the server side using Node. So I'm sure you would have heard about this, that these days applications are built completely in JavaScript, which is you have your view layer with React, you have your server which is with Node.js, you have your database with MongoDB, and then many people even use Express for all the handling. And there are definitely frameworks like MERN, MERN. Similar to the MERN, you also have Meteor and other frameworks that make use of React. Now, React can also power native apps. So you can use React Native. And of course, I have also created games using React and React Native, and they are on all three, which is web, iOS, and Android. So it is very much possible to use a lot of your code again and again. I would say the reuse is about 75 to 80%, but that's a good start. You don't have to write that much amount of code again and again. So yes, React is very effective there. React also implements one-way reactive data flow, which reduces the boilerplate and is easier to reason about than the traditional data binding. So the one-way data flow, which is basically from a parent to a child and it doesn't go the other way, it's a little different than the traditional data binding where every component had a binding up and down both. So it's called a flux architecture, and when we discuss our examples and we go into details, we'll definitely talk about it. So that was the code definition, brutally dissected for you. I hope it makes a lot of things clear and of course exposes you to a lot of concepts. So that being said, let's quickly go and see what are the advantages or features of React.js. The first one is of course the use of JSX. I know it's not a feature, but JSX is nothing but a JavaScript syntax extension. So what it does is, it is not necessary to use JSX in React, but JSX also performs very well and gives you a lot of power. So it's a recommended thing. The next is of course the components, and we already talked about it in the definition where we can imagine an HTML page to be broken up into components. So React is all about components. You need to think of everything as a component. This will help you to maintain the code when working on large scale applications. The next we have is a unidirectional data flow and flux. So React implements one-way data flow, which makes it easier to reason about your app. Flux is a pattern that helps keeping your data unidirectional. And the last and not the least is the license. So React is open source. So it's come by the CC by 4.0 license, which means do whatever you want to do. And that's the beauty of React. It's open source. Now let's see some advantages of what React brings onto the table. So the first and the foremost that React brings onto the table is React uses virtual DOM, which is a JavaScript object. Now this will improve apps performance since JavaScript virtual DOM is faster than the regular DOM. The next that we have is, of course, we've already talked about this, which is React can be implemented at the client as well as the server side. So server side, you can consider Google caching your pages, which is indexing your pages. The moment you search, your pages come in. So Google never waits for the client to render, or it doesn't have a client. It just has bots and spiders which crawl your pages. So for it to crawl, and especially if a JavaScript website is there, which is dynamic, a single page application, you may have multiple instances of the same page. In that case, React is very helpful. And of course, Google indexes can trace your page and index it accordingly. The next one is component and data patterns. So component and data patterns improve readability, which helps you to maintain larger apps. Of course, when there is discipline, there is of course a benefit added. You know how things will behave. And that's what components and data patterns do to you. So the next is React can also be used with other frameworks. So it's not necessary that you always use JavaScript frameworks for it. You can use React with any modern day web application, and React will just plug in and everything will work for you. So React is very flexible in terms of how you can achieve React goals. The next is the limitations. So the biggest problem or the challenge that I would like to put is React only works at the view layer. Because you want to have React on all your layers, or probably like a framework that can be coded all throughout. You just don't have to worry. Use React as a library and everything works for you from the JavaScript perspective. But that's not the case. You have React only at the view layer. The rest of the stack of your application is yet to be built by you. But if you're coding in JavaScript, it gets easier. The next is React uses inline templating, JSX. Of course, this was one of the features, but this is also a limitation for people to know, learn, and get used to. It's not difficult, but it's just a little awkward on some instances where you have to write your HTML in your JavaScript and how you write it and certain standards that you follow. But once you understand them, you will fall in love with it and probably use it elsewhere too. So that was the limitations of React. So that was just an overview on what React is, how it came into existence, what is the limitations, what are the features, and what are the advantages. I hope this gives you a very good idea on what React.js is. I'll see you in the next class.